Hey everybody, this is Tom Sorsey here, talking about some more bowling balls, once again with special guest star, world-class athlete John Zerbinski. How you doing, John?
World-class athlete. What an introduction.
Anyways, today we're talking about a Roto Grip ball. John being on the Roto Grip staff, this is the Roto Grip show-off. Let's take a look at it real quick. Micro DNA cover. If I am correct, that was on the No Rules, correct?
Yes, the original one.
The original No Rules. And this Hot Shot is a new core, right?
Yes.
Okay, so we got 255 and 045 are the RG numbers. What does that say to you?
Yeah, that's pretty unique. So basically, I think with this strong of a cover, they wanted to do something where they didn't have a ball like bogged down in a sense, just kind of be way too early. So I think with the core numbers being a higher RG on the higher RG side, it helps just kind of retain a little bit of energy. So you kind of have a little bit of a not so early motion in a ball. So it's something that kind of still wants to save and kind of continue just a little bit more down the lane.
Okay, so a combination of a pretty strong cover stock, as we know from the No Rules, but with a
Yes.
core that's not going to be as strong. It's not going to want to stand up as quickly, as early as that No Rules would, right?
Absolutely. So you have a little bit more of the dominance in the cover than anything.
This is yours. This is what we talked about before, the standard John Zerbinski drilling. It's a little
Yes.
more than a 5-inch pin above your ring finger. Is there a hole in this?
There is no hole, no.
Okay, so we have the standard Zerbinski drilling. We are once again bowling on the 40-foot Athens pattern. If I remember correctly, this was on the very, very fresh. So this is right out of the gate
Yes.
with no shots on the lane. So let's take a look at you throwing some shots here. So the first thing that I see right away is how smooth the ball reaction is here, right? This is a very slow response type of ball, right? We see it when it sees the friction, taking a long time to make its motion, especially the closed angles that you're using here.
Yes, absolutely. I don't think I really need to say anything more than what you just said. It's just something that I'm keeping in front of me, a little bit more on the slower response side, something that's not really changing direction very hard.
A matchup for the fresh, like we're seeing right now, something that you want to use early when you keep the angles closed, not so much as you chase it in later when there's hook in the front and oil down lane.
Correct.
No, it looks like you threw a couple of shots here. We start to chase it left a little bit here, and it still looks pretty good though.
Correct, and that's just the other thing is that I don't feel like I'm trying to keep my angles open too much just for the sake of fresh pattern. But on that one, you can see that I did get a little bit further left and was able to create a little bit of shape with it, and that just is being the fresh pattern. I think more of the dominance down the lane as you have the fresh back ends. So
Right, so you
that's
would want
where
a slower response ball at this stage, even if you have to use a little more angle.
correct.
Once we get some hook in the front and some oil down lane, it's probably not going to be quite as usable. It's going to want to burn up a little bit, use a little bit of energy, especially with the open angles, right?
100%.
Okay, so the ball that we're comparing it to is the Daredevil trick. Same thing, you start off trying to play the same part of the lane, and they look similar, but not exactly the same. To you, what is the difference between the two balls?
Biggest thing that I noticed, especially being in the same zones, is that for the first couple of shots, you can see him trying to be straighter. I feel like the ball is a little bit on the lower friction side compared to it. It's not as early. It's a little bit further down the lane, but it's a very similar shape. Maybe a little bit on the quicker side too, I would say.
Still on the slow response side of the scale, but slightly quicker response than the show off.
Yes. I would say, in my opinion, that the dominance more is along the lower friction side than it is response time wise.
Right. So basically, you would use the two balls in similar situations, but typically, if the pattern had more volume, you might be using the show off versus this trick.
Correct.
Still in the early parts of the game, though, still with more closed angles comparatively. That is.
Absolutely. Closed angles is the biggest.
So you
biggest
threw a couple
factor.
from into it, and we see the same thing, right? We have the fresh back ends, the fresh pattern. It still looks good, even with the open angles at this stage, at least.
And I think you could see the difference between how much more quick this Daredevil trick is compared to the show off.
Right, and so what we're going to do is we're going to look at some slow motion shots here, back to back. One of the show off and one of the trick so that we can get an idea of what they're doing when they see the friction at the end of the pattern. So first the show off here, it looks like it takes a long distance to make its move, which is the characteristic of a slow response ball.
Correct.
And then we're going to go to the trick next, and we see that distance is a little shorter, showing us a slightly quicker response We see it when it sees that friction, make a little more aggressive move. Right about now, we see it start to make that move, but they're still very close, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, definitely the very close side, and that's where I was thinking the dominance comes more just than the friction values. I mean, that the no rule or sorry, the show off definitely is a little bit more on the higher friction side compared to the Daredevil trick. So, like you said earlier, when you have a higher volume pattern, you're probably going to use the show off versus the Daredevil trick, and you're going to use the Daredevil trick on a lower volume type pattern.
So that would certainly be for somebody who has a larger arsenal who bowls a lot more tournaments. If you're someone that doesn't bowl that often, it would seem to make sense to me that if you're a little more speed dominant, a little lower rev rate, higher speed, then the show off is the option that fits you. And if you're a little more rev dominant, you have a little bit higher rev rate compared to your speed, then maybe the trick is a better option for you.
100%.
Perfect. So to go back again, looking at the show off, high friction, we talked about this before we started filming, and it seems like in the line right now, it's probably the second strongest ball friction-wise that we have right now. Certainly the strongest roto grip ball, correct?
It's close. It's close with the no rules exist that we have out there, just because the no rules exist core is strong. So there's two different like sides that you're kind of like
Right.
fighting here. I mean, it's like, you know, this cover is stronger, but yet the no rules exist core is stronger. So it's like,
So we're talking about different shapes,
yes,
but
absolutely.
from a cover stock standpoint, it's the strongest one in the
For
roto
sure.
grip line.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So from a response time standpoint, slow response, obviously best used early on in blocks when you're having your angles closed. Now I will say that you and I both used this ball to pretty high success at the U.S. Open on the double burn.
Yes.
Why did you choose, and I'll kind of explain why I used it too, but why did you choose to use this ball with all of that friction on the double burn at the U.S. Open?
Well, one of the tricks that I did is I brought it up with 4000 Avalon, so I tried to make it shiny just with Avalon and no polish. So basically, with the big cover, basically I wanted the ball to be smooth off of it, and I knew this ball was going to be smooth or slower response. So with the added surface, with making it really shiny in a sense, I was able to use it, and it just was really smooth and blended off of it, so it wasn't super sharp off of friction.
So I know I've talked about it before, but oftentimes we talk about how you start with these closed angles, you're using slower response balls. The pattern becomes a little more laterally defined. We open our angles up, we use quick response balls, but what we don't get to talk to about a lot is that once we've completely blown the front part of the lane up, there's almost no oil in the front part of the lane. We're lofting it over the gutter cap. We have to sometimes transition back down to slow response balls because the quick response balls will see the front friction hook immediately.
Yes.
So you don't have a lot of options. You're trying to kind of heave it over the fronts, and then you want it to hook down lane, but you can't because there's a lot of oil down lane. So we need to go to a slower response time ball to be able to smooth out that early friction when we've completely torn the lane apart, which is what happens in 24 games at the U.S. Open, right?
Yep.
That's why I went to it. I did the same thing you did, a little more shine on it. And I thought it was important to talk about because we don't usually get to see in these videos when the lane gets that way. But that was a really good example. So because we had to go back down the response time scale to slow, this was an option that we both chose.
Yeah, and it was a very good option because of that cover.
And then you ended up finishing sixth at the U.S. Open, right?
Yeah,
so it
that
was
was
pretty big getting through that double burn that ended people's week, basically.
Yes, absolutely. So I mean, the cover helped because that was the dominant side of it, but yet the core helped too because the core wasn't super early. It was a little bit further down the lane, so that actually helped my carry percentage a little bit.
Awesome. So as usual, thank you for watching. If you have any questions or comments, leave it for us in the YouTube comments or find us. I'm at facebook.com/tmsourcey. John is facebook.com/John Zerbinski Athlete. On Twitter, I'm at Tom Sorsey. John is at John_SZCZ. And of course, you're already here, but youtube.com/Tom Sorsey. We have the No Rules Exist coming up in the next video. We're going to keep trying to use the slow motion and make some changes kind of going forward. So hopefully that you enjoyed it, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.